Open Book with Susan Baier, the show where we learn about our community leaders and get to know the people behind the titles. I'm your host, Susan Baier, the Executive Director of the Allen County Public Library. We're here in Studio B in our Access Fort Wayne studios at our main library in beautiful downtown Fort Wayne. I'm so excited to chat with our guest today and learn more about him and his service to the community. Please welcome Executive Director of the Community Transportation Network, Justin Clupper. Hey, Justin.
Hi, Susan. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming today.
Yeah.
So what role does Community Transportation Network, known as CTN, serve in the community?
So CTN, put simply, eases the burden of transportation in our community. We're a private nonprofit, so we're not public transportation. We work very closely with our friends at CityLink, but we're two very different organizations. We fill in a niche of transportation needs in our community, primarily supporting low-income seniors and people with disabilities who need access primarily to healthcare resources, but we also do the occasional grocery trip or run to the bank, things like that. We also work with people with disabilities who need to go to work, folks that want to work every day and they need transportation. So we do that. And then finally, we work with other nonprofits to provide a low-cost charter option for them, working with a lot of private schools who they want to take their early learners on field trips. So we're taking a lot of folks to the zoo in the summer months and to the pumpkin farm in the fall.
And maybe sometimes the library?
Absolutely, we do.
That's great. Can you share some stories of impact and what CTN and its services means to your riders?
Absolutely. So, CTN, we ease the burden of transportation so that more people can maintain life-sustaining and purposeful connections in the community. And I highlight that life-sustaining component because we really try to focus on folks that need access to life-sustaining services like chemo, dialysis, radiation, things like that. Treatments that if you don't have access, bad things happen. But we also work with a lot of folks who just need access to therapies or to the eye doctor, to the dentist. And we had a rider who rode with us for a little while, and she's one of our success stories. She's a rider who doesn't ride with us anymore. She doesn't need us. And Kathleen, she was working one day and fell and had a significant injury with her hip and her leg, and it really didn't look great. She was going to be going to therapy for a very long time, and the doctors weren't sure, would she drive again? Was that really an option? And she's not that old. She's in her 70s. And what was going to happen? Well, she got connected with CTN, and now all of a sudden her kids didn't need to worry about getting her to therapy. She could go to therapy more, and she could actually beat the odds from what her doctors were saying, and she drives regularly now because she had access.
That's such an impactful story because your life can change on a dime. I say there by the grace of God go any of us. You think that you are completely independent, you have access to a car, you're driving, and you slip on the ice, or there's an accident at work, and all of a sudden you are in a completely different situation.
Not only that, but if something happens to your car, we have a lot of folks we've had a lot of clients that are individuals with mobility disabilities. They have their own vehicle, but then something happens to that car. We had a rider several years ago, great young man, fully independent, and he got into a car accident one day. His van got totaled, and it took so long to repair that vehicle or get a new vehicle ultimately. Because that's the thing, when you have a modified vehicle, it isn't necessarily just repairing the physical parts of the vehicle. There are significant electrical components, so that takes a lot of extra time. We were able to get him to work every single day. He didn't lose his job. He didn't lose out on any income. And he was really worried about that. He was worried. There was elements of depression in there that what's going to happen if I can't get to work?
You mentioned the importance of partnerships in your work.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some partnerships that have really added to your success in the organization?
So I'm really proud of the collaborative efforts that CTN has in our community. We work with, on average, more than 60 different nonprofits in our community. We've worked with the library on a number of occasions, and every single relationship is different. It's based on what that agency needs, and how can we support their transportation situations. One I'm particularly proud of actually came out of COVID. We received a state grant that, in partnership with Cancer Services, we were able to provide cancer rides. Rides to chemo, rides to radiation, but also rides to regular doctor's appointments, rides to scans, rides to other appointments of the pharmacy to get what they needed. We were able to provide over 1,800 free rides through that partnership with Cancer Services. And then I'm excited to say that this fall, that partnership was able to continue through a special grant from the Allen County Health Department. We're able to continue to provide those free rides through Cancer Services. Historically, Cancer Services has provided transportation, but they could sometimes only do it for treatments. But for anyone that's been in that boat, that it isn't just the treatment. It's getting to the doctor's appointment. It's getting to the labs. It's getting to scans. And we're able to fill that gap.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What is something about CTN that most people would not know about?
Most folks don't realize that we're not public transportation. We don't receive tax dollars. We are either earned revenue through Medicaid reimbursement, things like that, which is very little. But most of our funding comes from philanthropy. We have to fundraise about $1.5 million every single year. A lot of it comes through local foundations that believe in our mission, but so much more of it comes from individuals, folks that, they see our van out there, which isn't surprising. We've got 36 vehicles that are covering over 500,000 miles every year just in Allen County. And every time one of those vehicles goes out, it costs money. And philanthropy is what helps fund those rides.
I see your vehicles on the road a lot. It's great advertising.
Absolutely it is.
Mobile
Absolutely
advertising.
It is.
What are some of your greatest accomplishments during your time at CTN?
So this March, it will be 6 years since I've been with CTN. And I was reflecting on this question, and far and away, our greatest accomplishment in my mind is that through the COVID pandemic, in an industry where all we were doing was moving people who were sick, who needed to go to the doctor, and people who were medically fragile, we never once had a COVID outbreak among our staff, among our riders, connected to any of our vehicles.
That is remarkable.
Never once did we have it among our staff in the office. The way our team pulled together, whether they agreed with the decisions or not, they pulled together. We had partners that came in and provided training for all of our staff, so they understood how to not just clean the vehicles, but to make sure that they were properly cared for. And bear in mind, we had 2 vehicles that were dedicated solely to transporting COVID-positive individuals.
Wow. And
we
still no outbreak.
We never had an outbreak.
That is truly remarkable. Wow.
It's a testament to our team.
There's a lot of talk throughout Allen County about transportation and the challenges around it. In your opinion, what are some of the greatest challenges regarding transportation in this area?
Availability is the biggest challenge. Whether you're looking at CTN or CityLink, the availability of good transportation is sparse. We've not been able to grow our numbers in the ways that we want to and we need to, because of costs, because of everything that it goes into creating and funding that trip. We have to fundraise for that. And so any new dollars we receive ultimately next year it's now going to insurance, or it's going to new maintenance costs, or it's going to fuel expenses or wages. It's the same thing I know for CityLink. We see costs increasing at such a fast pace that we can't keep up. But that's our biggest issue in our community. We have CTN provided over 22,000 medical rides last year. And we know, based on information from the state, that the need in our community is over double that. And so when you think about over 50,000 trips being needed in our community, and that's just on Medicaid, that doesn't take into account Medicare as well. It doesn't take into account folks that aren't insured at all. That's just what we know from Indiana Medicaid, over 50,000 trips. But the challenge for us is that a medical ride for us costs almost $80. The average revenue we receive through Medicaid reimbursement, things like that, is about $39. So when we talk to donors, they're funding that gap.
Sure. So you've been with CTN now for 6 years. You've seen some great successes and you've seen some challenges. We've talked about all of that. Through all this, what keeps you motivated?
The thing that keeps me motivated are our stories of impact. When I get to hear from clients themselves that call me and say, hey, I just had a ride with Jim and it was so wonderful. We got to have the greatest conversation. And this is a rider who doesn't have family, may not have friends available to them. They got to have that social connection with that driver. What keeps me going is the knowledge that we have a remarkable team of people that truly have servants' hearts. They want to make an impact. They want to do more. They want to be better. And they want to provide as many rides as possible. And that challenges and encourages me to make sure that we have an operation that can serve as many people as possible.
That's such a good story. Isolation is so damaging. I remember when my mother was still alive and she was living where I grew up in Southern Illinois. She came to the time where she wasn't able to drive for a while and she depended on a service similar to CTN in our community. And she would talk about the conversations she had with the drivers.
Yeah.
And in some cases, because I'm an only child and I lived far away, that was her one social interaction of the day. And it made her day. And we would talk on the phone later and she would talk about the conversation she had with the driver and how the driver was so great to make sure she got in and out of where she was going safely. And it's such an important part of someone's life.
I'll never forget one of my first ride-alongs. The rider actually asked the driver if he could stay on the vehicle a little bit longer. He didn't want to be dropped off right away because he wanted to see the city. He wanted to see the other riders and talk to the other riders. Yeah. And the driver looked at his schedule and he could work him in to drop him off at another time. Another great example, our lead driver, Doug, always tells a story of shortly after he was starting, and it was during the winter months, he was driving a woman who she was asking about, the holiday lights downtown. Do they still do those? They had this giant Santa on the side of a building that was just so neat to see. Oh yeah, they still do that. They still do that. And again, he looked at his schedule. He had a little bit extra time, and he took a moment and drove her downtown. He let her see the lights. He let her see that, this is still happening every day. Another driver who, we had a longtime rider that unfortunately, we seek to have folks live in their own home for as long as they can. And ultimately it comes to a point where they can't. And this rider was riding with our longtime driver and, I'd just love to see my house again one day.
Oh my goodness.
And Jim worked it out with scheduling a couple weeks later that he could have a little bit extra time and he got to take her by her house. And none of us could have known that she passed away about 2 weeks later. And those are the things that go well beyond transportation. Those go well beyond getting to the doctor's appointment.
Your team truly has servant hearts.
Yeah.
That is just a remarkable story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about you a bit and your experiences as a native son of this region.
Yeah.
As a native of Northeast Indiana, what have been some of the biggest changes you have seen in our region over time?
I grew up in Columbia City, and Fort Wayne was the big city. That's where we came. We also went to Warsaw a lot. My dad worked in Warsaw. But I think one of the biggest changes that I've seen is the connectedness between the different communities. You know, I hear family talking about going up to Angola or Auburn or Kendallville or other communities within Northeast Indiana that we never really thought about going to before. We knew they existed because we played them in high school athletics, but we never really visited those places. And now we have family and friends that do that on a regular basis. We do it as a family. We go and see these different gems in our region. And so that's been a big change. It's been a big excitement. I remember coming down to the embassy when my grandmother sang in the Philharmonic Chorus, and she would sing in the Holiday Pops at the embassy. And the embassy was the only thing here. And that was it. And we'd park in a weird shaded parking lot next to a liquor store, and that was what we did. And that's not downtown anymore.
Definitely not.
No.
So I was doing a little Googling, as a librarian tends to do.
I can understand.
Yes, and I learned about your history with student radio, that you were involved in radio in high school in Columbia City and during your college years at Taylor University. We know a little about radio here at the Allen County Public Library with our own station, Welt. And I wondered, how did you initially get interested in student radio? And are there lessons that you learned that carry with you today?
I got plugged into radio in high school because it was something new and different. It was technology, it was media, it was exciting, but also it had two of the coolest teachers you could ask for in high school. They were fun, they were different, and that was a big part of what drew me into it. And I went from taking radio class to taking another radio class, and then realizing I could be a student manager and I could work some of the athletic games in the booth and record station IDs and help influence the music we were doing. It was just a ton of fun. I fell in love with music. I fell in love with crafting a music taste for people to experience. The unique thing about WJHS at the time, the Columbia City's high school, is that we were AAA, Adult Album Alternative. That was our format, and there was no other AAA station in the area. Closest was Chicago. And we played music that nobody else was listening to. And it was really fun. It was different. It was exciting. And then, out of that, when I started looking at colleges, I thought I wanted to go into radio. And that's what I started looking for. And I found Taylor, and I remember on a campus visit that the professor that was leading the radio program at the time, that, if we don't find someone that really can come in and students that can be passionate about this, it's not gonna happen. It'll be flipped over to a repeater station for their sister radio station. And okay, I kind of felt like that was a God moment for me, that, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. And at that time, WTUR, the university's radio station, was pre-recorded, nothing live on the air. And we actually got the administration's opinion to change. We built up our own street cred, and we broadcast live for the student body again after being dormant for about 6 years. And now it's a popular live internet station that they have student shows all the time.
You mentioned IDs. I get some perks as the director here, and once in a while they do let me record a station ID, and it
Yeah,
is so, so fun.
it is. So at WJHS, we always connected station IDs with movie quotes.
Oh,
And so this is, the late 90s and early 2000s where it was becoming really popular to record from a movie and take that snippet like we'd have memes today. And we would just fill our station IDs with funny movie quotes. And I loved it because I got to use my favorite movies.
so now I have to ask, what were some of your favorites?
Oh, well, we would do lines from Blazing Saddles. We would do lines from Airplane. We would do lines from Dumb and Dumber. Office Space. That was the one. I kept wanting to say The Office. I'm like, that's wasn't there when I was in high school.
So we have something in common, along with about 1.4 million people around the globe. We are both Rotarians.
Yeah,
I am wearing today my Paul Harris Award
I
pin,
noticed.
which is a recognition that the Rotary Club International gives to some members. You are currently the president of the Rotary Club of Fort Wayne, of which I'm a member as well, and you are about at the halfway point of your presidency.
Yeah.
So, for our viewers at home, what is the Rotary Club of Fort Wayne, and what initially motivated you to join?
Rotary is both an international service organization and a local group of people that just want to see cool things happen in our community. The neat thing with Rotary is that if you want to primarily and only focus on what's happening in your community, you can absolutely do that. If you want to have an impact on lives globally, you can do that in a lot of different ways. Rotary is first and foremost a service organization, and we focus on service above self. We are people of action, we often say. And what drew me to Rotary was that my board really kind of told me one day after my first year, we want you to get out in the community. We want you to get connected with people, build relationships, do something that will support CTN but also fulfill you. And Rotary is what I wanted to do. I had a couple friends that were engaged with it, and so I joined them for a couple meetings, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It wasn't stuffy and stodgy. It was lighthearted. It was fun. It was informative.
There was singing.
But not a ton of singing. Not overly awkward singing. It was
Good point. Good point.
It was the national anthem, and I was okay with that. But I got to hear from really cool community leaders talking about exciting things. And then on top of that, I had the opportunity to work with the Boys and Girls Club, or I could work with Community Harvest Food Bank, or serve a meal with Ronald McDonald House. It was just a fun way to connect with meaningful folks. And yeah, it's a great way for me to network and connect with like-minded community leaders for CTN, but it's also been my outlet. It's my service to the community.
I had a similar Rotary origin story. I first joined when I was the library director in Paducah, Kentucky, and then I transferred membership to here when I got this job. And I get a kick out of when it was announced in the community that I got this job, but I was still living in Paducah. The reference desk at my library at the time got a phone call from the chair of the membership committee of the Rotary Club of Fort Wayne asking to speak to me, wanting to make sure that I was going to be transferring my membership to Fort Wayne. So I appreciate that sort of enthusiasm.
That sounds about right.
That's the drill, yeah. So you are currently president.
Yeah.
It is a significant investment of time. It is not a job that you phone in. You have to be very dedicated. When you were asked to run, what made you say yes?
Well, it wasn't my decision alone. And that's, I think, the most important thing to understand, because to lead a club, especially a club of our size, we have more than 130 members in our club. We're very active. We meet every Monday for lunch at Parkview Field. That can be hard to attend sometimes, but as president, you're making a significant commitment. You're also making a commitment to cast a vision for the organization and for what the club can do during your year. I knew that it couldn't just be my decision. I had to ask several people and get their buy-in. First and foremost, I asked my wife because I knew it was going to take me out of our home, and we have younger kids. I asked my leadership team because I knew it was going to detract me a little bit from the office. You know, we have an important mission for our community, and I needed to make sure that they were going to be able to back me up. And then I talked to my board leadership, and I said, is this something you're okay with, and understanding that it's going to pull me out of CTN here and there? And every one of them said yes. They all had their own little caveats here and there, which I gladly accepted. But it was all because they recognized the opportunity for impact that I could have, that we could have as a Rotary Club, that we could have as CTN. And it's the other nice thing was I knew I would be president this year about 2 years ago. So I could start to prepare. My team could start to prepare.
You asked me to serve on the board of the Rotary Club, which is nowhere near the commitment of being president, but is a commitment.
Absolutely.
And I said yes because of you, because I talked about my own constraints and life, and we're all busy, and you really met me where I was and convinced me that this was something that I could do and something where my voice would be needed, and I was happy to say yes. So thank you for that, and thank you for the confidence that you and the Rotary Board put in me to serve in that role.
I was glad you said yes.
Yeah. You're hard to say no to.
It happens.
So speaking of which, if someone said to you, why should I become a Rotarian? What's your elevator pitch on that?
You know, Rotary is looking for folks that they want to get involved in the community. They want to make an impact. They want to connect with like-minded people. They want to be a force for good. They don't want to just sit around. They're tired of that. And to them, I would say, join us for a meeting. Join us for an opportunity to connect with other Rotarians. Join us to hear what's happening in our community. You know, we meet every Monday, and half of our meeting every Monday is dedicated to a community leader. We had the CEO for Blue Jacket today talking about the impact that Blue Jacket's having. Next week, we get to have the president of Indiana Tech. Later this month, we'll hear from Mayor Tucker. And each one of them will share a unique perspective about what's going on in our community. Sometimes we hear from nonprofit leaders, sometimes we hear from for-profit leaders, and they talk about their business. We had the local leadership from Amazon talking about the impact and what it takes to run a facility like this. We had a boat manufacturer, a speedboat manufacturer, come in and speak, and the boats they sell aren't used here in Northeast Indiana. They're used in the Atlantic and the Pacific and the Gulf. They're race boats, and it was just exciting and interesting to hear from what they're doing.
We had Mike Nutter with the Tin Caps.
We did, yeah. We had Mike talking about everything that they're doing in the community. But more importantly then, we have service options. You know, we have a group of folks that go to Washington Elementary every week and work with kids on tutoring and help them study for tests. One of my favorite things with Washington Elementary, usually in April or May, we'll do JA in a day. And we'll go into a classroom and I knock out junior achievement for them. I love that we've adopted Washington Elementary and kind of become an ancillary PTC and help that school thrive and get what they need.
So there are thousands of Rotary clubs throughout the world. They're all special in their own way.
Yeah.
But what makes ours special and unique?
You know, every club is different and has its own culture. It has its own feel. And our club has worked very hard to be what our community needs, to be what our members need. And we have other clubs here in Fort Wayne that meet, and they meet at different days and at different times and at different meeting timings. Some of
And
them
we all get along.
and we do. We're great friends. We're all Rotarians. You know, our club works really well because we respond to the needs of our members, and respond to what's happening in our community in a meaningful way.
Service is a common thread in your personal and professional life. And I wonder, is there a moment you can pinpoint in your personal and professional life that shaped your passion for community service?
My passion for service and doing the right thing started a long time ago. It started growing up. You know, it started as a kid in the values and what I saw being modeled by my family members, especially my grandfather. He never missed an opportunity to serve and to love on people and to make sure they had what they needed. And I wanted that. I saw the impact that he got to have on people's lives, and he did it in a lot of different ways. At one point, he was a school board member. Another time, he was just being a barber. He was a real estate agent. Part of the reason he was a real estate agent was so that he could help his kids buy their first homes and not have to pay realtor fees. He worked in his church. He worked in the schools. He worked in the community. When community leadership needed someone to step up and help with new housing projects in Columbia City, they called him. Oddly enough, he was the board president of the Whitley County Council on Aging when they launched Whitley Transit.
Wow.
And so he was there when they got their first vehicle, when they did their first ride.
So my next question, it's a bit self-serving because I'm also going to pick your brain for some advice.
Yeah.
So here at the library, we have many young people who work for us. Some of them relocate across the country to come work for us. And they're new to Fort Wayne and Allen County, and they want to get involved in the community. They have a real passion for service, both inside and outside of work, but they're not quite sure where to start. Or they're not quite sure if someone who is young or maybe with less experience or maybe less money to give at that stage in their life can make a difference.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you give to them?
Obviously, I'm going to encourage them to join Rotary, because we're going to have some new things later this year that will make Rotary accessible to everybody. When I moved back to the Fort Wayne area after college, I got plugged in with Young Leaders of Northeast Indiana. That was the best decision I made when I came back, because I wasn't in Columbia City. I wasn't home where I had people from high school that I'd grown up with. I wasn't around my family. I was in Fort Wayne, and I wanted to be in Fort Wayne. I wanted to work in Fort Wayne. And Weil and I was the way I did that. Out of that organization, I was able to take leadership classes. I was able to get involved in service projects. I was able to get involved in community impact things. Championing Weil and I the vote and learning about the importance of elections and the importance of knowing who you're voting for. And Weil and I is not really expensive, and it's one of those things that you get out what you put in. That's where I tell people to go first. Mm-hmm. Any young professional I see, I tell them, you go to Weil and I. You check it out. You go to a hot spot. It's always the third Thursday. It has been for 20 years. It's an easy way to get plugged in and check out.
Good advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
So our final question is a segment we like to call here on Open Book, the tail end with Toonces. So I will explain. Toonces is my very opinionated gray cat. And he would have liked to have come to the studio today, but he was very comfortable in bed, so we decided not to.
Yeah.
But he did want me to ask you a question.
Okay.
You have 2 young children.
Yeah.
When you think of the future of Fort Wayne and Allen County for them and their generation, what would you like it to be?
I want it to be a community that they always want to come back to. I want it to be a place that they see their families being raised here. I talk to a lot of friends that they want their kids to get out and experience the world. And I absolutely want that. And I had that through college and through some high school experiences as well. And you can do that through trips. And if they want to go and take a job for a while somewhere else, great. Experience the world. There's true value in that. But at the end of the day, I also want this to be a place that it's hard for them to think about going anywhere else. That this has everything that they need. It has the amenities that they want. It has the family. It has the friends. It has the accessibility that they need.
Thank you so much, Justin.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So we have a standing date every Monday at Parkview Field.
Yep.
The two of us and a few hundred of our closest friends.
Absolutely.
This was really great to know you a little better. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Susan. I appreciate it.
And thank you so much for watching Open Book with Susan Baier. Until next time, keep turning those pages.